So my name is Chelsea Rice, and I'm here today from Helena. I have a really small literary organization down there called HALA, which is Helena Area Literary Arts, or HALA. So for the past 2 years, me and my friend Deborah Bernardi, who is an author and intellect and academic at Carroll College, dreamed up this series for women to have a voice on the stage, specifically a women's space. And of course we want to do all these grandiose things with it, but what we have determined is that women tell their stories best without a filter. And so I have, for this event, asked specifically women in my life to come out, or women authors who are attending the Book Fest, to bring an essay that is 800 words about their life, that is inspired by a Pulitzer Prize winning poet in some way. And that is a nod and thanks to Montana Humanities, who gave us a grant tonight for the refreshments and back so that we could keep you here longer. So this is a reading of her own. Sometimes it's women bearing witness, and sometimes it is just what it is. So it's raw, and we don't edit what comes through. So I want to start tonight though with one of the first poems that I ever read about being a woman, that you're going to be like, oh, that's kind of cliche, and I'm going to be like, that's too bad. This is Her Kind by Anne Sexton. I have gone out a possessed witch, haunting the black air, braver at night. Dreaming evil, I have done my hitch over the plain houses light by light. Lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind, a woman like that is not a woman quite. I have been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods. Fixed the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, driver, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright routes, survivor, where your flames still bite my thigh, and my ribs crack where your wheels wind. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind. I think that's the last word. So the readers will introduce themselves when they come up. They've signed up on their own, and we have 10 tonight for you, and we'll end cap it with another poem by a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. So hang on to your seats and let the first person come up.
For me? All right. I think this is 8 minutes. I didn't time it, but it's short. Sorry. This is called Small Town Girl, Missoula, Montana, and it was inspired by Elizabeth Bishop. So bear with me. I've been talking today. Small Town Girl, Missoula, Montana. Crows pepper birch trees. The morning paper thumps the porch. You're in your bed, the whisper of pages turning. Watery light sinks into a valley that was once an inland sea. The distant, incessant bark of a dog interrupts and pervades your dreams, your silences. Streets with names stamped in the cement curbstones. Ronald, Gerald, Evans, misspelled Evans. And the wonder of walking over that mistake year after year to grade school, high school, university. The thunk of suitcases on the stairs when the ants arrive each summer. The word town derives from the Dutch word zaun, that means fence. A town was a village that literally could not afford to build a wall around itself. Instead of fences, you have ants. Ants who arrive each summer and unpack their shorts and sachets, veins like small purple explosions on the backs of their knees. The California ant with her beef liver and kelp pills. The Texas ant with cigarettes, highballs, and stories about your great-grandmother who killed a mountain lion with a heart shot. The Wyoming ant with her stories of birds and blizzards. So many aunts, so much advice. You must get an education. You must not go out of the house without lipstick, clean underwear, brushed hair, gloves. Gloves? Make your own clothes. Have a nest egg. Waste not, want not. Don't marry the first boy who turns your head, but find his stomach and you'll locate his heart. Do not talk to strangers. Walk with a straight carriage, head high, past the nice man who teaches school and feels up his daughters, past the red-faced boy who mooches off his bent-backed mother, and the dentist who recites the Gettysburg Address as he drills your cavities, past abandoned dogs, stray cats, and on down to the railroad tracks where the Milwaukee freight trains rumble by carrying cattle, wheat, and logs west and east and back again. You must not climb trees, even though from your perch in the mountain ash you feel this valley belongs to you, from the Clark Fork River to the mountain named for a circus elephant to the ditch where a hobo was found dead once. You must get straight A's. You must not speak out. You are never smarter than a boy, though we all know who really wears the pants. You must always let the boy, the boyfriend, the brother, the fiancé, the husband be the star. Flatter him. Ask him about himself. Show an interest in his car. What kind of car is it? You stand at the window on a summer night, heady with the perfume of the lilac bush below you, thinking how you would like to lie down in the grass under that violent scent and be kissed, the long, slow meeting of lip on lip. Then your father cuts the lilac down because he is tired of mowing around it. You must not think about touching yourself and that pleasure that washes up from between your legs and engulfs you. You must practice piano, scales, arpeggios, trills, Bach inventions, Mozart sonatas. Look at you go, back straight, feet on the pedals, fingers flying across those ivory keys. You know that if you step on the sidewalk cracks, you'll break your mother's back. Sometimes you want to break your mother's back, but you never say that because you are a lily-white, non-sweating, non-smelling girl, would never have an evil thought like that. No one likes an angry girl. When the paperboy takes you into the playhouse and asks you to show him your thing, and you tell him no, then that other boy, the son of your parents' friends, comes into your room during the bridge game and makes you touch him again and again, the door opening and closing. No sound at all. That's better, no sound at all. Then there are the other girls, the girl who teaches the class, the secret, I before E except after C, the fat girl, the hippie girl, the girl who smells, the girl who is a little slut, the girl with the jaundiced skin, girly girls with their ruffled anklets and taffeta slips like upside-down umbrellas, the girl your aunt tells you about who got pregnant and died of an accidental death while cleaning a firearm, the Blackfeet girl who teaches you to skip Bible school and the delight of swearing as you tromp across a plowed field, shit, piss, fuck, screw. The tomboy girls who climb trees and play kickball, too loud, too physical, too messy to be real girls, so they have a lot of sex later to make up for this deficiency. The girl called whore, bedded by her father, bedded by her stepfather, who lay her arms down across the table saw and cut off her hands. So one day you step out of the fence. You hop a freight train with a young man you met in the library. As the train rises through the mountains, through the dark forests of pine, Doug fir, and ponderosa pine, you drink beer and eat slices of cheese, and the man cuts with a hunting knife. At railroad crossings, you stand in the doorway and wave at cars and laugh at the looks of surprise on the drivers' faces. The mountains are dark, thick with snow, and you can feel the rise of the continent, the clattering of wheels on rails, the cool breeze fanning your face as your old life falls away. Something new is in your blood, something thrilling and true, and you and the man make love on your sleeping bag as the train crosses the continental divide and plunges down into land scoured of vegetation by the repeated flooding of a glacial lake. At the Columbia River, you hang onto the open doorway of the boxcar as the train snakes along the river, watching the house lights ripple in the dark water, the skies spackled with stars, smelling the raw, open smell of the ocean approaching, of your future churning forward. Nothing in your life will equal this. The peering ahead into the darkness, wind whipping your hair, the lights on the river, and this will bear you up in the years ahead, over all those fences, past all those aunts who whisper in your ear, cheek to cheek, do not, do not. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa T-Berg Johnson, and the poem that I am inspired by is by Ray Armentrout from her Pulitzer Prize winning collection Versed, and the poem is called Name Calling, and I'll read just a couple lines from that. Objects are silly, lonesome as the word ow is. And those lines inspired this piece that I titled The Spirit House. When I think of silly objects, I often think of my aunts. I have 5 aunts, all from my dad's side of the family. My aunts are collectors of trinkets, baubles, commemorative Disney plates, and Bev Doolittle prints. One memorable day of collecting occurred with Aunt 1 and Aunt 2 when I lived in Portland, Oregon. After a pleasant Sunday brunch with Aunt 1 and Aunt 2, we began our walk to an ice cream shop for a late afternoon dessert. I was hoping to avoid any shopping, but my aunts insisted on stopping in just one store. If you're familiar with Northwest Portland, particularly Northwest 23rd Ave, you'll know what I'm talking about. Amid home stores like Williams-Sonoma, Pottery Barn, Restoration Hardware, there are those little independent home decor boutiques, the kind that are meant for browsing, not buying. Entering one of these boutiques was not a good idea, given my aunt's tight budgets and overspending predispositions. Immediately upon entering, Aunt 1 oohed and awed at everything in the store. What she chose to fixate on was a tiny book with a red heart on the cover. One of those little books filled with encouraging quotes and photos of sleeping puppies. She clutched the book to her chest, tears already bubbling up, and said the heart reminded her of someone who loved hearts so much. Really, hearts? The dramatic grasping and sighing and the onset of public crying was enough to quicken my own heart rate. Thankfully, a sales associate approached and I snuck away. I heard Aunt 1 begin divulging her life story to this unknowing and innocent associate. Aunt 2, meanwhile, was inspecting a glass box filled with shiny fake foliage and a candle. "Look at this spirit house," she said. "Spirit house?" I asked. Aunt 2 explained that it was a sacred vessel for spirits to rest on their way to the afterlife, something she learned during her travels in Bhutan. The spirit house was to be filled with meaningful objects to soothe the spirits. "Interesting," I said, thinking it looked like a generic decorative box or a terrarium meant to house creepy-eyed lizards. "I can't find the price on it," she said. I glanced at my watch. The store would be closing in 15 minutes, as would the ice cream shop. While Aunt 2 inquired about the price of the glass box, I tried to occupy myself perusing items in the store. With minutes left before the store closed, Aunt 2 approached me and said the box cost nearly $200. Then she asked, "Do you think I should buy it?" I thought, no, absolutely not. You just lost your job, so why would you ever consider buying a $200 glass box? But knowing my aunts, I proceeded cautiously. "Maybe you should think about it. If you still want it tomorrow, you could come back and get it," I said, feeling grateful for those lessons of self-control taught by my parents. Aunt 2 stared at me, scratched her head, and said, "But I'm afraid it won't be here tomorrow. These are very rare." She turned from me and went back to the glass box. I noticed Aunt 1, still disclosing, still sniffling. The sales associate looked at me for help. Aunt 1 pulled out her credit card, dabbed tears from her cheeks, and paid for the tiny book with the heart on the cover, a $20 tiny book that wasn't within her budget either. I walked out of the store and waited on the sidewalk. All I wanted was to get some cookies and cream and go home and watch Golden Girls. The store closed promptly at 4, and out came Aunt 1 with her heart book, and Aunt 2 lugging a huge cardboard box with the spirit house inside. Again, she explained the rarity of spirit houses and how much she'd always wanted one. I tried to smile and be supportive. We parted ways there on the sidewalk, and I headed back to my apartment. I suddenly wasn't hungry for ice cream anymore, and decided it was best not to splurge on the $5 artisan cone. Now, years since that day, after losing loved ones and recognizing the objects I'm attached to, I've given it all a second thought. Just the other day, I asked Aunt Tu what happened to that spirit house. She said it was in storage, along with the rest of her hopes and dreams. Then she thanked me for remembering. It all felt much less silly with hopes and dreams involved. The thought of filling that spirit house with knickknacks and remembrances, even a tiny book, makes me smile. Yes, these objects may be silly, and it's foolish to think that any object might fill our voids or ease our loneliness. But ultimately, our silly objects are ours alone to understand and enjoy. Thank you.
Oh, this is weird. I can't see any of you. Okay. Maybe that's good. So this is my first attempt at sort of purposely writing nonfiction and reading it, so I hope it goes okay for you guys. I didn't have a particular poem or line that I was inspired by. I was inspired by Sylvia Plath and her use of blood. So, there you go. It's just everywhere. This is called I Hear Your Song, and it goes like this. They wheeled her out in a shower cap, which I mistook against her gray skin as the curled hair of an 80-year-old, someone you expect to be taken in for life-saving surgery. That's why I was laughing so easily in the corner as they pumped her full of pint after pint after pint after pint of life. Later, in the cold Lower East Side night, I woke up to grief. In this red light of this bar across the street from Grief, he told me about his mother and about the sand that stays in your underwear for days after a tidal love affair. At that, I think, and with some unbecoming judgment, perhaps the most solitary thing you can do is ask a person to refuse your existence all over your body. I say, it's you I'm talking to there, all of you and all of your bodies, turgid and blunt, like a tulip stem of sadness, pressed between the fourth and fifth ribs, not like a knife, but to grow swift, sharp roots until the flower bursts out upon my shirt. It's okay. This is how we know life was in there all along. In the red light of this bar, a lot of successful 20-somethings, or maybe those in their early 30s, laughed at each other's jokes, patted each other on the back for another job well done. The art show was about grief. I got the sense, in this light, that sorrow had been handled, wrangled, pirouetted back where she came from, without leaving a wrinkle, a speck of lint on the tailored black jeans. Except for the man in charge, who thought organizing an art show with dozens of pseudo-mourners was the way to flash off death. And he spoke rapidly, breathlessly to me. No, to the echo. I was more a ghost than either his mother or his lover with the sand in her underwear. And so, of course, I instantly had a crush on him. Sometimes you just want to listen to someone else's grief because you hope that means they can hear your own. But I never heard from him again. Instead, I gave my number to a Dimitri Martin lookalike. Oh, somebody knows who Dimitri Martin is. That's good. Who only ever wanted to make people happy, literally. Leave it to a psychologist to go trolling for dates at Sorrow's after party. It was okay though, I liked Dimitri Martin. And this funny mind reader was how I learned there are these little plastic houses to put in front of doorways during construction, maybe to keep dust from getting into the street. Less well known is that you can step into one, apple red with clear plastic windows at 4 a.m, and you don't even have to kiss. You can just debate whether or not you're going to kiss, because this is only sort of a date and you don't know how long you'll be on this course and you don't know each other that well, and boom. One by one, 4 separate couples will stop around you. You will see them through the viscous window. There will be sweeping of hair and kisses that lead to back bends with one leg up in the air, just like in the movies. It will change one homeless man's life. He will wander into the flood, tied to the apple red box, throw his arms to the air and bless the scene with his declaration. Look at all this love. This is beautiful. Love is beautiful.
I've lived in Missoula. Whoops. I've lived in Missoula all my life. I've never once been on this stage. My name is Naomi Kimball, and I have been lately inspired over the last couple of years by a poet named Claudia Emerson. And the piece I've brought to read tonight isn't a direct response to any one of her poems or to her specifically, but as a nonfiction writer, I find that I'm woefully underread in terms of poetry, and poets tend to find me. And her book, Late Wife, sort of fell into my lap, and I read it cover to cover several times. And I found that her poetry was so beautiful and vulnerable and yet really accessible to me. And she inspired me to believe that I could begin to incorporate some lyricism and poetry into my own work. And this essay that I'm reading to you tonight is my first lyric essay I wrote a couple of years ago. And it is an exploration of an emotional state using some sights and sounds and history of Western Montana. It's called Orphan Girl. And I'm going to try to manage the mic and my pages and see my pages. The sky is coated with scurf, the color of tin. Bands of haze hang at the fringe of the valley, giving the impression that the mountains have receded into memory. The air is thick and full of grit. A mouthful chokes me. A good storm would clear it, but the days are still and quiet, as days often are under the bowl of winter. This air will be with us for a while. My perch on the bridge is 50 feet above the tracks where trains throttle up, sensing diesel into stands of smog. They stretch the length of the valley from east to west, sawing between empty and filled, depending upon which direction they're traveling. The tracks are never bare, and perhaps some of the dirt I breathe is from the coal itself, or a bit of the prairie it came from that lingers in the air as full trains flow to the west, a dark river made of dark matter that empties into the sea. Coal is Montana's second largest export. It rumbles under my feet, courses and booms through the valley as trains pulled to rolling bite their hitches, slam hook and eye one after the other, sounding like great inland waves made of metal. I feel a tremor in the girders and the bridge sheds its pigeons. Sunlight turns a bit of the sky from tin to pearl. If I follow the tracks east, they will lead me to my ancestors, although copper, not coal, was the ore they worked. My great-grandfather mined it. My grandfather was on at the smelter, but they didn't pass down many stories, and it's hard for me to imagine the shafts and furnaces of their youth. I knew a man who worked in a mine called Orphan Girl, 3,000 feet in the ground. But he only described the ore and the lights they carried as if the darkness stood unseen. My grandfather once told about the heat and catwalks and a man who lost his foot in the copper, but the story ended quickly with a moral. The man was lucky he didn't lose more. I don't know if I'd call that luck, and I can only dream of the deep drop, the darkness that laps the skin like an ocean with a drowning toe, and the fire that turns rock into pennies. What I know is the coal and the trains, but the earth was stripped, not tunneled to get it. Copper can be taken that way too. Butte has a pit a mile long where part of the city once lay. A person can stand at the edge where they put a plaque and a wooden rail and imagine falling to the poison waters below. Blue like the ocean when the sky is clear. Tricky. A loose pig thought he'd found a watering hole and shambled down the path. A stray dog lived at the edge for 16 years like a ghost that couldn't cross. And late one fall, a flock of snow geese landed on it flying south and died. The water lures, as if metals that seep from the earth are magnets. And I can just about sink through the air like a nickel on my pitch to join that flock of dead birds. Seems crazy to have taken my child there, but I did. And I clung to her body as we looked over the edge. But whether to keep her from falling or me from jumping is a bottom I can't see. I've felt like that before, from a bridge over a rushing river, from balconies overlooking ravines, from up on the roof shoveling snow. I'm filled with the idea I'm already falling, that the fall is inevitable. When I was little, I'd look at the sky and spin, then lie on the ground and could swear the earth turned right under me, feel it teeter on its own edge, loosen, open, and let go. I'd close my eyes and move fast like clouds. The looseness tickled then, but now it's a sense akin to vertigo, especially in a high place or at the edge of a deep one. I have never ridden the bucket and rope called a chippy hoist into the earth, but sometimes manage anyway to lie at the bottom of a dark shafted hole, wondering if the pinprick of light above me could really be the sky, a point so far up that looking is another kind of fall.
Wow, I feel like it's cheating to have this up here now. My name is Diane Raptosh, and the title of this piece is On Need and Satiety, Some Meditations on Being a Single Mother.
You have to
Twice.
turn it on.
Oh, it's not on?
Do I have to do that all over again? Sorry. It's called On Need and Satiety, Some Meditations on Being a Single Mother Twice. Though I have revised the way I refer to being a single mother now, a marriage-free mother. Has more positive connotations. I think it should be adopted universally. I'm the single mother of I'm the marriage-free mother of 2 daughters. One biological, but what child is not biological, and the other adopted. Said another way, one child came about as a result of swapping body fluids on a bed of leaf litter and fern in the mountains of Stanley, Idaho. The other as a consequence of sheaves of written words exchanged with nameless Chinese officials. In short, I've been pregnant once and expecting twice. These 2 ways of having a child seem, in retrospect, more or less equally difficult, both awkward and elegant, each unequivocally right. By the way, this is inspired by a quote by Sylvia Plath, who you'll hear about in just a minute. I teach at a small, relatively conservative private liberal arts college in Idaho. During my pregnancy, which coincided with the academic year, I lived in daily abject fear of losing my job. The male college president at the time, I imagined, would have no difficulty expelling such a wanton young female faculty member, I was 29, in only her second year of full-time teaching. To avoid being fired, therefore, I told my department chair that over the summer I had gotten married. And that, oh, by the way, I'd be having a baby sometime in the spring. He congratulated me with a planter of yellow mums. I strategically told one other member of my department, who I knew would be sure to spread the above news post-haste campus-wide. I revealed the real truth to the few colleagues I think of as close friends, and considered my duties of professional disclosure fulfilled. The urge to have a second child, which caught me entirely by surprise, began dogging me when my oldest daughter, Keats, was 3. Give it another year, my friend Elizabeth admonished. The desire will melt away. I told Laura, a good friend and married mother of 2 girls, that I was thinking up ways of having a second daughter. You haven't figured the math, she said. 2 kids add up to more than twice the work as 1. I waited years. I analyzed layers of this yearning as though it were an intricate fossil. Am I afraid of the possibility of my own increased freedom? Am I afraid I would fail as a writer if I allowed myself more time to devote to that? Or is this desire a supreme example of what James Baldwin calls writer's greed? The writer's greed is appalling, Baldwin insists. He, she, wants or seems to want everything and practically everybody. In another sense, and at the same time, I'm changing his he's to she's. She needs no one at all, and families, friends, and lovers find this extremely hard to take. The words of Sylvia Plath capture this paradox best. Perhaps when we find ourselves wanting everything, it is because we are dangerously close to wanting nothing. I went back through several sketchy journals I kept when Keats was an infant, hoping to scare myself out of my own craving. Monday, 10/19/92. I am so tired I can taste it. I have so few moments to myself, even less a sense of what a self is meant to be. Monday, 12/7/92. My sleep is fragmented, my house is in pieces. By day, I am frayed. But here is a fragment from Heraclitus. The most beautiful order in the universe is a heap of sweepings piled up at random. Sunday, 12/13/1992, a reminder from the play Saturday in the Park with George. The only things worth leaving the world are children and art, children and art. But how many children? And how much art? I continue to discuss my obsession with friends. Keats's father was supportive, a bit nervous about how I'd be able to handle the increased responsibility of a second child. Gary, the patient and kind man I had been dating for 7 years, but did not live with, did not say much on the subject, but vowed he would try to be helpful however possible. I thought you wanted to be a writer, my child-free writer friend Vicky in Wyoming razzed into the phone, listening like a crystal for a virus. It's irrational, said Terry, the philosopher, and I agreed. Maybe you just want a bigger family, suggested the school nurse. So how does a more or less willfully single working mother of 1 go about having a second? How do so without mucking up the relationship with the first? I dared not ask Keats's dad if he'd like a go at having another. I knew that being the father of Keats was enough. What's more, we were not a couple in the truest sense of the word. Likewise, having a child with my boyfriend Gary did not seem like a reasonable option. His 2 kids were already teenagers. Besides, he'd had a vasectomy. What were the chances of a successful reversal? And if it did work, we would all have to share the same house. Become, in the vernacular, a blended family. A family with 4 children. While Keats and I liked Gary's children well enough, we would not necessarily have wanted to live with them. Likewise, why should they have wanted to live with us? As for me, how would I ever find solitude? When would I write? I searched to no avail for a gay man with a drive to procreate. This is all true, honestly. I can laugh at it now because I have some distance, but anyway, it was a fever. It was like being in a fever dream. I considered artificial insemination for a while and realized I did not feel compelled to pass my genes on to the next generation a second time. Nor did I think I could endure another pregnancy more or less alone. Having investigated what I thought were the best possible options, I began to settle into the idea of adoption. I began the rather massive paperwork necessary to adopt a baby from China in July 1999, beginning with the first letters that would go to China. Addressed to honorable Chinese officials, this missive featured a series of adoption agency recommended promises. I vowed never to abandon or abuse my Chinese daughter, never to place her in servitude. I pledged to steep both of my daughters in traditions of Asian literatures. I affirmed that I would provide my Chinese daughter with the best education possible. I described the somewhat irregular contours of my family and the overall tenor of my home, pausing over such particulars as the trio of raccoons that make off with half the dry cat food on our back, the sense of goodwill on our back deck, the sense of goodwill that characterizes my relationship with our various others, that family of foxes also living in the drain pipe up the street, to whom Keats and I bring baked chicken legs every spring. We imitate the squeals of a mouse by kissing the backs of our hands. On a cool Friday in September 2000, I stopped by the office of the new female department chair just for a chat, something I often did. We talked about what this new school year was likely to bring, preparation for assessment and all that kind of stuff. On my way out, I mentioned that I was expecting another child sometime in the next couple of months, that I had no idea who the father was, that I might need to miss a day or two of classes. She shot me a bemused look and laughed. I think of William Blake's reminder that you don't know what is enough until you know what is too much. A couple of months ago, the girls and I moved into a larger townhouse across the street from which every south-facing window allows a view of the entire city of Boise and its environs. At 2 a.m. on a clear December night, it looks like some raw galaxies stretched out across Earth. To the east, the downtown lit in gold and white pulsations. Just southwest of that, the pink lights of Edwards Stadium 21 theaters. To the west, the Oahe Mountains heave in their white nightgowns. The living room is littered with student papers still to be graded and kid paraphernalia. Keats's favorite CDs, The Rocking Horse, the red and yellow Rescue Rider, the talking alphabet desk, plastic Oreo cookie halves with shapes in the middle, ovals, moons, plus signs, stars strewn across the carpet. Drop cloths bunch up in the main hall waiting for the second coat of paint. I haven't seen Gary in more than 3 weeks, though he doesn't complain. I haven't written a poem in 2 months. I haven't gotten any exercise in over a week. It occurs to me I prefer a life that will never quite cohere. I am back to reading Heraclitus, as fragments are all I have time for. Fragment 8. What opposes unites, and the finest attunements stem from things bearing in opposite directions. Keats has been sick much of the night, wafting in and out of sleep with some stomach ailment. Madonna's What It Feels Like for a Girl wafts from her room. I told her she could play her boombox as late as she wanted if it helped her to get through to the morning. In the company of a wriggling candle flame, I, at the same time, am trying to listen to the Cuban folk vocalist Silvio Rodriguez sing Cassiopeia on the living room stereo. It is a somewhat disjunctive listening experience, really too much to take in. Layers somehow plain and complex, city and country, water and word, everything, nothing, boyish, girlish, and I rather like it. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Ashley Warren. I was raised in Missoula, and I now live in Billings. I was introduced to the poetry of Mary Oliver by a yoga teacher. She used to read Mary Oliver's poems at the end of class, and so I really came to kind of interpret and understand Mary Oliver's work through the journey of my body. And so this piece is somewhat inspired, and I've been kind of meditating on some lines from a poem called University Hospital, Boston. Doctors did what they could, longing for tools still unimagined, medicines still unfound, wisdoms still unguessed at. And so this is my piece. Things I've learned after my 4th concussion. On December 28th of 2009, I stepped on what I thought was a puddle. It was a good, confident, I'm ready for this day, even though it's 6 in the morning and winter step. And then I slipped on the puddle and fell down. It was ice. And I've probably been falling down one way or another ever since. I tried to go to work that morning. My coworker said rather unabashedly, "You look terrible." And asked what happened. I said I hit my head, even though it felt like what had happened was so much more significant than that. I hit my head. It makes it seem like I opened the cupboard door on my forehead, or I misjudged the ceiling when I got out of my car. I hit my head is something you say right before you erupt into giggles at a sleepover. I should have said there's been an earthquake in my brain. 8.0 on the Richter scale, at least. I was diagnosed with a moderate concussion and told to take the week off from work. I went home, but I'll admit, I still worked. 6 years later, I understand that what I thought was perseverance was poor judgment. My 2nd and 3rd concussions were unremarkable. For the 2nd, I slipped on the ice again. The 3rd, I fainted and hit my head on the way down. These concussions were unremarkable in that they were mild. I was back to my old self within a little over a week. The 4th concussion was stupid. Dumb luck. The kind of situation that makes you think, really? She's having this much trouble because of that? My dog hit me. Like a boxer, he reared up and clocked me right under the chin, uppercut. I didn't even fall down this time, and yet this injury has tipped the scales of my life in ways that have completely knocked me over. It's been 9 months since the accident, and I still experience dizzy spells, an inability to concentrate, stuttering, fatigue, and balance problems. I've come to accept that returning to my old self might not happen for a long time, or ever. This is what I've learned as I recover from my 4th concussion. The body is a wild, intelligent creature. I assume, though I can't know for sure, that when I don't want to drink coffee and beer tastes like Scope mouthwash, that it's my body's way of saying, don't drink that shit, we're trying to heal a brain here. I realized that my body was probably sending me messages like this even before the accident. I was just too distracted to pay attention. Hard is not the same as bad. I had to quit my job as a fitness instructor because I couldn't do it anymore. I taught 1 class a week on Saturdays, and I loved my clients. They are wonderful people, and choosing to give up that Saturday morning routine was hard. But after I made the decision, something happened. Instead of feeling like exercise was my job or something I did for other people, exercise became something I did to feel good and something I did for me. Sometimes we don't know why. In the weeks after the injury, I was scheduled for an MRI and an X-ray, both of which came back clear. My doctors told me things like, concussions are weird, and we're sort of guessing, and let's give it more time. 2 months after the 4th concussion, I had what was likely a stroke. Again, my tests came back clear, and as I lay in the hospital bed waiting to be discharged, the doctor asked me if I had any questions. I asked through my stuttering, Why does this keep happening? The question I was really asking him was, how can I be having these neurological episodes if all of my tests are coming back clear? The poor doctor didn't have an answer. But I think I was asking something else too. I needed to ask the question out loud, and the doctor just happened to provide the opportune moment. Why does this keep happening to me? A person who doesn't play contact sports or rock climb or work construction, how can a person like me have 4 concussions? I was talking to someone who also fell and got a concussion. She said, "It's weird. So many things feel different now. I feel like I got the sense knocked into me." And I knew exactly how she felt. It took the inability to use my brain to begin to use it wisely. Getting the sense knocked into me was about giving myself permission to start over, to have a second chance at being me, to learn how not to fall down, and more importantly, how to stand up. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I feel like I stretched the rules a little bit, but you'll have to tell me. This really was inspired by a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. I've been thinking about cowboy poetry for a long time and country music, and I've never written that or really known anyone who had. Or been to these festivals or anything like that. And it was something I wanted to play with, and I've been wanting to play more with writing because I tend to take it really seriously. And so I wondered if anybody had ever won the Pulitzer Prize for cowboy poetry, and nobody has. But there was this guy, Leonard Bacon, which is a great cowboy name. He was a Yale professor. He won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1925. And he won for this epic poem, very based in the classics and not very accessible, very old school, ivory tower stuff. And I didn't really get it, but Leonard Bacon worked as a ranch hand in Montana. The internet will tell you all kinds of things. And it was in Utica, Montana, between Great Falls and Lewistown. And he lived and worked at Yale, and he was this fancy literature professor. And he wrote cowboy poetry on the side with his friends from the ranch in Montana. And I thought if he could do it for fun, then so could I. So, that said, it turned out a little darker than I anticipated. So, but I had fun. So anyway, this is my, what I was thinking about was contemporary nonfiction feminist cowboy poetry. And I forgot to wear my boots. I'm wearing my dance goes instead. It's like, yeah. All right, that's all I have to tell you. So this won't take 8 minutes because I got tired of it. All right, so this is the ballad of the Department of Interior's investigative report on misconduct at the Grand Canyon River District. The light's kind of weird here. Deep in Earth's heart and a world apart, a river flows miles through the rift. Dark, deep, and cold, it slices, it molds, it rolls, meanders, and drifts. The sun will press down, the rapids can drown, boulders will fall from the sky. If the wind starts to gale, come lightning, come hail, it's not a bad place to die, my friends. It's not a bad place to die. But the canyon, it calls. with its light on the walls, its lap of water on clay, the secret green places, the gnarled stone faces, and beer at the end of the day. For a woman who counts birds or one who refers to geology in her research, the river's more than a quarry for adventurer stories. It's the place they get their hands in the dirt. They study the rocks and the plants and the dirt. With the growing demand for water, for dams, the turn toward more heat and more dry, it's the scientist's mission to watch the conditions that will keep the river alive. We know whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. Without water, the West will go bust. But the eagles, the deer, the bats with big ears, that river's not just for us, my friends. The river's not just for us. 9 days from home, no web and no phone. The river's the only way. The work in the field gets done, signed and sealed. The work in the field gets done, signed and sealed day after sunbaked day. To get to the place, to make it through safe, the Park Service hires a guide, a boatman to steer, scientists in their gear, and you'd best keep him on your side, my dears. You best keep him on your side. The king of their ship with an oar at each hip, they're smart, they're tough, and they're tan. The crew's captain, head chef, lifeguard, and sheriff. And not every boatman's a man. In the river's great roar, they spin, turn an oar, do a dance with each rock and boulder. Their mayor of camp, fight the dry and the damp, read the weather for hotter or colder each day, read the weather for hotter or colder. Then came a request, finally hit the right desk, to inquire into behaviors. For years, no one cared, lost notes and blank stares. The boatmen remained kings and saviors. But now the dam broke. Where there's fire, there's smoke. The word they used was misconduct. The reports delivered the women's rule for the river. Be likable enough to get food, my dear, but not likable enough to get fucked. A boatman rejected, was mad and dejected, and the trip was no longer fun. When women put up a fight, he'd row past the site where the work was supposed to be done. Not all boatmen were mean, as petty and scheming, but defenders got plenty of flack. Crew who insisted were often blacklisted or rode with a target on their back, my friends. They rode with a target on their back. 19 people or more didn't keep quiet, of course, about dealing with all this shit. They filed detailed reports and were soundly ignored, and when they couldn't take it, they quit. The scene has improved with policies moved through offices far to the east. And there's a rich hell for a boss who won't tell, whether head ranger or coach or priest, dear ones. The head ranger, the coach, and the priest. Now there's a bird who will never be heard by a woman who cares that they thrive. And here's humble plants that won't catch the glance of the woman who wants them alive. But a desert will green when the rain's finally seen, and sometimes we can right or wrong. Every night ends with sun, and there's work to be done. And the river makes us strong, dear ones. The river's what makes us strong. Thanks.
Hi. It's time I came clean. I'm not really transgender. I always knew the day would come when lawmakers like North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, Republican, would see through my ruse and decide to sign common sense legislation into law. A law that'll protect the sanctity of bathrooms from progressive thinkers like myself. His law makes it illegal for trans people to use restrooms that correspond with their gender. In other words, now I have to show my birth certificate in order to pee in his state. I hatched my plan decades ago. All I had to do was feign dysphoria, struggle with addiction, attempt suicide, come out to my friends and family, convince psychological and medical professionals I was trans, get my blood tested, start hormone replacement therapy, and wait for the hormones to start showing some results. Become sterile, grow boobs, start getting my beard lasered off. Well, all except the gray and dirty blonde hairs. Lasers don't zap them, and they don't go pew pew like they do in science fiction. I digress. But that's not all. I also had to learn how to apply makeup, buy a bunch of new clothing, lose my muscle definition, work on my posture and voice, and give up my male privilege, etc. And after all that, I would be able to go into the women's room whenever I wanted. You know, just to hang out and pick up chicks. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted, hiding in stalls, waiting for just the right woman to step inside. Not just any woman, mind you. I had to reject many and just keep waiting. Imagine their disappointment, the ones I rejected. After opening a stall door, keeping the stall door unlocked is key. And discovering the majestic me in all my glory, hunched on a toilet seat like a sexy gargoyle. So neither my head nor my feet were visible, only to be sent on her way to look for another stall, an empty stall, because she wasn't good enough for me. It was worth it though, because eventually, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours later, the perfect woman would always enter my stall. And at these times, I typically like to start with a joke, something to win her heart. Like say, "Hey baby, you come here often?" Every time I've done this, the woman of my choosing swoons and moves in for an intoxicating embrace, immediately forgetting why she came into the bathroom in the first place. She's under my spell, at least until I reject her a few days later and go back to work stalking female restrooms for my next. It's so simple, my plan. Elegant, seductive, effective. At least it was until Governor Asshat decided to ruin it for people like me. I guess it's time to give it up before I get into legal trouble. Hard to imagine all this time there were never any laws already in place to protect people who use restrooms from this type of behavior. So, I'm sorry to my friends, family, and wife. I've misled all of you just so I could use the woman's restroom. And I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for those meddling lawmakers. It's time to pack up my dresses and makeup and donate them to some worthy cause. It's time to stop taking my hormones. It's time to return to life as a man. Sincerely, Steve. I'm Tori Barron. I'm transitioning trans woman from Helena, kind of on the world's longest, weirdest road trip from Hawaii to New York. Made the toughest stretch, made it from Hawaii to Helena, and that's hard to do. The car is shot. But as to whether or not I'll make it to New York, that remains to be seen. It's a long, strange trip, and I thank you for sharing part of it with me. Oh, and my poet is Tracy K. Smith, and Sci-Fi was the poem that bizarrely accompanies this.
Most people choose paper. I also chose paper, but nothing worked. None of my 3 devices could receive my file. So I'm here with my laptop, and I'll try to stay out of the way of it. I'm sorry about that. I'm here largely to dedicate this reading to my friend Chaz Staven, who today donated her kidney to her mother. They both had surgery, and I haven't heard how they're doing. But before the surgery, I promised Chaz that I would write something for her and read it on her behalf tonight. So this is for her. What I wanted to say about it, related to me, is that I'm a survivor of multiple sexual assaults. And that means that I have a close relationship with death. And it shows up in much of my work. And sometimes to survive, I've imagined that I cheated death somehow, and that there was a wonderful human being who stepped in and saved me from it. That's not actually true. That's a fantasy. But I like to write him into my work, and so you'll see him in here. So this is for Chaz. Let's imagine death is a wind. It blows strong and soft, taking leaves from trees, fish from streams, mothers from daughters. It blows through for us all. When Natasha Trethewey wrote an elegy to her father, she imagined it with foreboding. The river seeped in over your boots, and you grew heavier with that defeat. We are all defeated. Death sweeps in, cheats survival. Trethewey likens her father's attempts to control a fish on a line to his attempts to relate to entanglements with his daughter, to reel her in against her will. She wins, imagining writing his elegy long before his death. Let us make death a breeze. No sickles, no graves. Let's say it sweeps a horse into death near water, lays the horse on its side, leaves it there to be found by a man. He sinks his knees into humus, wet marks on his jeans. He skins the horse, preserving the head and hooves intact, then hangs it over a branch, arranging the skin carefully, leaning out over the waters below. When the branch seems nearly overwhelmed with what it carries, he sits on a fallen log to watch. A breeze arises, and the branch dances with the dead. Today, my friend Chaz had an operation to donate one of her healthy kidneys to her mother. Chaz is a beautiful woman with a beaming smile, dark hair of Hawaiian ancestry, tall, strong, quick-witted, generous. She has a husband and children and a mother she adores. Can you clearly see the man stumbling across the dead horse? Can you imagine the love he had for all horses? His respect for their generosity, for their sacrifices, for the freedoms they possess for us, even as they are domesticated and contained. Can you hear his footsteps suddenly cease? Hear the weight of the bag dropped from his shoulder, the cutting implements inside, the sober burden of his task. When Chaz first mentioned giving her mother a kidney, it was after tests showed they were a good match. I can give my mom new life, she said. I wanted to reel her in. What kind of generosity is that, I thought. This desire to give life to the person who gave you no choice about living or dying, as if life is the right choice. You love your mother, I said. She taught me how to love, she said. I learned it from her. The forest is a gory mess when the man is finished. Flesh flung in various directions, piles of what once filled the horse's abdomen, bones, piles of meat. The skin is intact. Some of the cuts required a skilled hand, capable of strength and also gentleness. The knife might have glided along without effort until it hit some knot of gristle, some old injury. For Chaz's birthday, we went to Capitol Hill in Seattle and had dinner, drinks, ice cream. Chaz asked me what I thought of Dick's Burgers. I said I knew nothing about Dick's. You're a Dick virgin, she said. I hesitated. Yes and no, I said. You've got to go to Dick's, she said, tonight. Then it was Molly Moon's homemade ice cream. Oh, she said, you've got to do that tonight. We're going to Dick's, then we're going to Molly Moon's. By the end of the night, Chaz had created a bucket list for me. We're doing all these things together, she said, after the surgery, when I'm better, when Mom's better. Maybe you can see how the man yearned for that dead horse to live. He found a way to bring her back to life. He removed all the dead parts, the hardened insides, the problems of blood flow and water retention and urine production. He left it all to the earth in its gory, bloody state. See the careful way he threads the branch through the open mouth of the horse. Hear the branch as it hits a bit of bone and then slides along the neck, lifting it, moving like a quiet river of blood fills an empty vein. See it move along the back of the horse's skin, filling it. There it reaches the tail. A hair falls silently to the earth. Listen to the man wade into the water and until his boots overflow. Feel the cold slide down over his feet and then climb back up again. See his arm hold that head above the water, keep the back evenly balanced until the dangling hooves are weights on an outdoor tablecloth. Watch him trudge up the bank to run his fingers through the tail, untangling hairs, allowing some to fall to the earth. Several days before Chaz's surgery, she says, I'm anxious. I hadn't thought about what I'm losing, only what I'm gaining. I'm afraid of the pain and of maybe not being okay. I tell her, I don't have a mother I would ever willingly give a body part to. I don't know how to love like that. Your love overflows. Whatever happens, I say, it will fill the crevices and the gaps won't feel empty, and others will learn about love from you. So there is the man sitting on a log near the horse. He waits as he has his whole life. He's watched horses, sized them up, figured them out, responded, resisted, been occasionally cruel, too restricting, too sharp, too forceful. And then it comes. The breeze rises up from the west, shifts its course, drawn to this necessary act. First the hoof twists, then the tail waves. The branch raises the neck. Another hoof twists, rises, falls. The neck raises and lowers, and the horse is galloping again. The head rising and falling on the branch. The back lifting and returning. The hooves twisting and cavorting. The head twists on the branch as if the horse were tossing it in play. The man gathers his things. Chaz will have an absence she will feel for a while, an emptiness perhaps, which she will have to fill with some new thing. Her mother is likely to gain another 20 years. They will have a shared story of cheating death, watching the breeze lift a playful tail. The breezes will blow through, and they will cavort, more alive than dead. Thank you.
I'm Deborah Bernardi, and I'm from Helena, and with Chelsea helped sort of think up this idea for these short essay readings by women. And I'm gonna close out the evening by not reading a work of my own, but by reading a poem by Natasha Trethewey, who is one of my favorite poets. One of the reasons I think that I've become so fond of her is that I read something that she wrote where she said, "Poetry is my weapon." And I thought so much about issues of guns living here in Montana, and I thought, yes, this is what we need to keep in our gun cabinets, some poems. So this poem is about a mother, so following the previous reader. And I think it affects me because it's about this idea of thinking about our mothers when they were young. So it's called Early Evening, Frankfort, Kentucky. It is 1965. I am not yet born, only a fullness beneath the empire waist of my mother's blue dress. The ruffles at her neck are waves of light in my father's eyes. He carries a slim volume, leather-bound, poems to read as they walk. The long road past the college, through town, rises and falls before them, the blue hills shimmering at twilight. The stacks at the distillery exhale, and my parents breathe evening air, heady and sweet as Kentucky bourbon. They are young and full of laughter, the sounds in my mother's throat rippling down into my blood. My mother, who will not reach 41, steps into the middle of a field, lies down among the clover and sweet grass, right here, right now, dead center of her life.
Did you want to come up here, Chelsea? There's refreshments in the back. Please eat some. Thank you for coming. If you want to get with me or talk to me, please stop by and say hello and have a good book fest.